We are here at my little workbench. I'm hoping you guys are going to be able to see this better than you have in previous videos. So, I've got an aircraft here. I like mostly my tail. I'm not a huge fan of it. And I have an idea. If we take this, and we look here, you'll see that these are close in size. They're not that close though, but they are. If I take it this way, I could get the same aileron surface out of it with less surface area if I did something a little different, a little shorter, and a little more scale for a World War I aircraft. Now, this one is almost identical to this one, just slightly bigger, guys. You look at that profile, and you look at that profile, they are basically the same. They're very similar. I'm not happy with this one. This is going to be for my P-47. I'm going to redo that. I am happy with this one for the way it looks. Well, maybe. But I think if I was, I probably wouldn't be in the middle of redoing it. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to see this back line here. It's a little sloppy. I'm just going to trim it off. And I'm going to look very carefully at this. Now, you might say that you need to do this another way, but I'm going to say to you this. I've been doing this kind of stuff for years, and if you do the angles right, you will get this right every time. So now I just want to start cutting down that angle until it looks perfect. And now we're going to actually put it against something else that's flat. And then I'm going to look at it, and I'm going to try and gauge whether these angles are correct. And this is a really telling angle. For me, I'll try and show you guys. It looks pretty good to me. The angles that should be are, and this looks just about right. So now we'll compare that to this, because this is going to be our vertical stabilizer, and this isn't so bad. And a good rule is if you put it from the middle of your stabilizer and you fold it over, it shouldn't be any bigger than that, generally ruled. But this is an alternate style of tail to this. If you wanted a lot less control authority, you could use one like this and just make a small aileron, and you would have a lot less control authority. With this type of plane, believe it or not, you could do that. And the reason you could do it is because, well, if you use a small motor and you're looking at a plane that's tiny like this, this is actually enough. If you were to make a control surface here, if I just take my scissors and rock on into it. And I wanted to show you guys in this series too that you can build these all by hand without measuring anything and come out with something that isn't crap. And what you want to look is that the angles here are about the same, and it looks pretty good, actually. It looks like I got that just about perfect. But I've been doing this stuff for a while. I know what I'm doing. So in the end, this is another style. Now this has a huge surface for this size of an aircraft. I mean, look at the darn wing. This is a big aileron. So I want a lot of control authority out of that. And the trick is, while this would be a good tail for this if you're a beginner, that's not the way I'm doing it. This is going to be my aileron. Okay? And because it is, I want to be able to have the aileron huge. I want a big aileron. I was tempted to go with the whole wing as one aileron, only I can't. So it has to be split somewhere, and I actually did want to leave room for flaps later should I decide to go that route. And then I have this as my aileron, which is nice and big and fat and juicy, and 3D flyers like me will appreciate why I want a big aileron, especially since I'm going to have another wing that isn't going to be doing the actual controlling. That'll keep the control plan for this plane really simple and light. Now, I have a couple kinds of VGs that I've designed for it, but we're not done because I actually want a tail that doesn't suck, so hold on. Now what I've done is pick up the first scrap that I see here. And I don't like to wreck this section because for the 12-inch planes, this is a great start to a tail. I usually start with that section. In fact, in one of the videos, I actually took a section from here and made it quite big. And this actually would work for a big aircraft, and you can have a neat little up on your, and maybe even have a lift body to it. But you don't want to put lift on the tail. You won't really need it. It'll fly right and it'll be really light, and that's what you want without doing all that. Just because of the angle the tail sits on in relation to an aircraft wing, it basically will angle it up a little bit, okay? Just because of the way they fly and the way that things work, it'll angle the tail slightly up, and they're designed to fly that way. And it'll make it so that the tail will always have a little bit of lift just from the angle it's on and the fact that it's there. So, you don't have to worry too much about that. But I am going to make myself a wing here that doesn't suck, hopefully, but I know in my head a ton of World War I and World War II designs. I'm actually a pilot. I grew up studying this kind of stuff, and so I have done tons of these. Now, both of these designs are different, but this one is going to be original as a biplane. Not technically completely. I mean, it's pretty close, but in the end, it's not actually perfect. It's very close, but what can I tell you? Okay, so I've cut a section, and what I'm going to do is I want a tail for this that it's actually going to be quite big, but quite small at the same time. I have a very much squared off aircraft, and I want to keep it that way for you guys, partly because it's a nice simple build, but partly because they fly really well, especially with the little mods I'm going to make to it. And the size of the control surfaces and all these things, they all add up. They all matter. The shape of the tail, all of it. So in this case, I actually want something like this. Okay, so this looks gross and huge, but I'm not done yet. What I wanted was a nice rounded back, a little flat, and then a nice angle. Well, believe it or not, this is a great tail. But look at the size of this. Does that look proportionate to you? Does that look like the kind of thing I'd put on this aircraft? No. It's pretty big. So we're going to trim this down. And one of the things I'm deciding is that I like this angle, but we can't make it this big. Well, what if I make it like this? I'm going to cut in, and then I'm going to cut out. And then I'm going to test fit. Because when this goes over the back, what if I wanted to have it kind of mounted like this and split the tail and have it come up and down? I could do that, but what if I wanted to mount like this? I could do that too. So there's a lot of options. I don't. What I actually want is to cut some of this out so that I can stick it deep enough that this can reach in front of it and get grip on something other than just this. I want it to sit at its maximum, therefore. See this? I want a little angle here, a little angle over top of this, but it doesn't have to be much. I just want a little contact. And where my cut is has to all go away, okay? It has to go out this way because I want it gone. But what if we looked at it from the other way? It's the same thing, but it'll give you an idea of how big the aileron is and basically what I'm looking at. If you wanted this to mount here and still fully function as a tail, that's okay. You could basically make one that's flat along the bottom and will take up this whole space. But if you do that, move it forward so that when you make your aileron, that won't be a problem. I'm actually going for something else. I want something that will actually sit around this and give me enough room that at its maximum deflections, I can work it. So I need to go in a little more first because I can see that I'm not quite there on that angle. And I don't want to go too far, but I just did probably, but that's okay because I don't want the tail to be too crazy effective. And we're going to put it like this. Okay, you can see I've gone pretty far down here. But there's a reason for that. This tail could be really complex. I can make one that glues on here off a little standoff and sits here so that this housing will protect it totally and it will operate completely within this. If you look to about halfway here, I actually could do that. That's doable. And this whole surface will turn. That's one option. That means I have to build another section off the bottom of it and attach it here to the bottom. That means it's a two-piece and it's complex. I don't want that for this simple build, guys. So I'm going to make this quick and just give you one that will be proper for this type of an aircraft. And the reality is, I need something that is fairly big, that is pretty squared off, and something at the same time that'll be a functional tail for the airplane. The problem is, I built a million of those, and they are kind of boring. So, take a look at that. We have a nice tail that's got some angles, but it's also rounded. That's a possibility, but it is too big. And when you have one that's too big, instead of doing something drastic like I did here and ruining what could be a good thing, I'm just going to keep working this and maybe taking some shape into it. But instead of making a bulge out, you're better off making a bulge in. So I'm just going to try and make a real shallow one, and see the difference that made? It made it a lot sleeker. So I'm going to come up here and do that a little deeper, just a touch, and get an angle where you're not bending the scissors. Now, I want it pretty sharp, and like I said, I want it to extend farther than that. Now, if I want to just cut a section out of this so that I can have a big aileron, and this can be in any position, and this can be in any position, don't forget it doesn't have to go down. All it has to do is operate back and forth, right and left. And there's a couple of ways I can go about it. I can mount this far enough forward, like I do on most of them, where this whole thing can move and operate, and so can this, and it won't matter. They'll never touch each other. But in this case, I actually don't. I kind of want it to be more like this, where these come exactly to the same level, and that's the end of the biplane, and it makes this as a tail. Okay, that's what I want. So, in order for that to happen, I need to cut a notch out of here. And the best way to do it is just like that. I take a rough estimate with my eye of what that is going to require, and then I cut it and I check and see if I'm right. And sure enough, I am. Now, you might not think so, but this is, in fact, going to be just fine, because I'm actually going to mount it up here, and then I'll just keep moving it back little bit by little bit. And if I have to trim it again, I can. Okay. That's actually looking good. I'm kind of hesitating right there, because that's actually a decent amount of deflection. And usually, with the way these are designed, I'm making them so that when you put on the throttle, they do climb a little. And at the same time, when you want to climb, they climb a little. Now, this doesn't really look like that good a tail, does it? I mean, it came out with good intentions, but I'd have to cut it again right here if I wanted to mount it out here. If I mount it here, this isn't bad, but it needs a little more angle. And here's the problem. If you start with something too small, this is why you'll see I generally don't. I start with something pretty big. And so now it's at a little bit sharper of an angle, and I can mount it in the same place and get a little more deflection. The problem is you don't want to take out surface area here, which is why in the first place I made it big here. So I have plenty of material. I'm not too worried. This is one of the things I wanted to show you guys, but I don't want to take too long to do it. So I'm just going to knock this one out, because I already have an idea in my head of what I actually want, and it's pretty square. So I'm going to knock the back edge of that off. I'm going to knock the front edge of that off. Okay. Now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to take a look at this again, and I'm going to try and envision in my head what I want, and then I'm going to cut it. But I'm not going to do this. I actually want to do the other thing, where I maybe mount it inside halfway to here maybe, and have the whole thing function. No, I could slide it through and make it a totally standoff tail, and then slit this, but that makes it complicated. Now I have to do a lot more in terms of control surfaces to make this happen. I don't want that. So here's my option. I'm thinking if I could do this just like that and make this so this is the back edge, put it up pretty sharp. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go from here to that corner and take it right out and make it a rounded edge. Okay, like that. And now I'm going to take it and flip it around the way I actually intend it to be. Aha, like that. And we're going to look at it as a control surface in the first place and see if I like the look of that and the angle that it's on. I really don't. To be honest, I haven't liked any of them. in a lot of ways. But I like this one for a variety of reasons. I really do. So I'm going to do that because I really do like it. It's just about perfect for what I want. And it's kind of like the tail on a bird. Only this gives it pretty good deflection. And now you want to check it. Because now that I have a bigger one, there's a way to do this where I'm actually not trying to take out from here. I'm trying to take out from here. So don't go the other way. Go this way. That way I'm not taking any off this edge. Just lean the scissors over and take a chunk. And now check it. Okay, just like this. And now I have a higher deflection. And if it's not enough, I'm also going to be snipping this off at the bottom to make it the right height. So don't worry about that. I just have to see where things stand right now and do it very incrementally so that as you do this, and now I'm at the point where it's mounting off here, and this would be a good way to do it actually. And then from there, this has a fair bit of deflection, a lot, enough that it actually will have enough. And with this all set straight, it's got tons of deflection, and that's what I want. So now I have to figure if I make it too low, I then change that dynamic. So I don't really want to do that. I want to do it about like that, and it'll actually sit right here on the tail. And if I put it on a flat and do that, I actually have a lot of deflection, guys. And that was my goal, and give myself a ton of deflection. Now, I also want a really big control surface, but I don't want this to be too flimsy. So I'm actually going to go out to this edge so I can give myself a fair bit, but I also want to get this whole edge in my aileron. So given those two considerations, I have to run the middle zone, and I'm going to put them just like that from one corner to the other. And then I'm going to go on to the other side now that I see my crease and kind of just neaten it up so that it actually will have a nice little hinge. Okay, so now we have something that resembles what we would want. And we can put it on here. And this is actually the part that is the aileron. Now this isn't done yet, and I'll show you guys that later. This video is getting way too long, but we're not done yet. I still have a couple other things to do. The glue gun glue is hot, so we are going to hit it while it's hot, so to speak. And I'm going to get right to what else you see here. Now I'm going to take that little bit of glue and smooth it along because I don't want too much glue on anything. And I got to do this fast. And I'm just going to go out to the tip and put a leading edge VG on this. Okay, I have one here that's the same size. They're just a little semicircle of foam, and you get them off the edges of these boxes, and you get quite a bit of the material like this that ends up being your scrap. So out of the scrap, I have made these, and I just want to look here at my angle, sorry about that, at how much distance is there, and try and mimic that on the side, on the other side, and the same here. I'm looking for the distance here, and I'm looking right around there, and I'm looking right around there. So I'm going to push that down, and if like that your glue dries, you just add a little more. But you want to be quick about it and try and place them fairly quickly, or the glue will dry on you. So there's a bit of pressure on, but it's not much. And the truth is, these fly so well, guys, that if you make a little mistake and they're not perfectly identical, it really won't matter that much. It's a little bit, but it won't matter as much as you might think. Now, I've also got these little guys. I've got a whole bunch of little pieces I can use for this, but this is going to be the design. So the bottom wing has these guys there, but it's also going to have a couple little guys. And I'm just going to do these with my hand, which is awkward, but you can do it. And what I recommend is you put it on the glue gun glue. See how it turned it when you pushed it? You push the glue gun glue a little bit, and now it's giving me the little banum. And I'm going to wipe off the excess, grab it from the other way like that, and now place it on the wing where I want it to go. Now, I'm actually just going to place it right over this point, right here. near the tip. And then I'm going to take another one, and I'm going to try and match that on the other side as exactly as I possibly can. In fact, it doesn't really matter all that much where you place this one because of its position and size and effectiveness. I'm going to have to re-glue that. But in the end, the idea with this is to make it so that you guys will have... Oh, no, I just dropped it. Arr, Billy. Arr. Well, it's okay. I have one more and one more over here because, you know, that's just how this works. All right, so now I'm going to take this guy and I'm going to not use that one. Actually, it's slightly bigger and I don't really want that. I had two that were exactly pretty much the same size, but to be honest, it won't make much of a never mind. So I'm going to take it and I'm just going to set it down roughly in the same neighborhood as the other one. And all these do, anytime you're talking about a vertical generator, it's not a vertical generator when you hear VG, it's vortex generator. And all it's doing is changing the airflow. Now in this case, what I want to do is keep this over the ailerons so that it spoils the air, and it spoils the air across the ailerons slightly differently. This one will actually spoil the air out to the sides, and this one spoils it in a nice wide path across a major portion of the aileron out at the tips, which makes the tips of the ailerons more effective, but keeps the whole package effective. Now, I have one more of these. I was actually going to do two, but this is actually probably good if I just do three. Oh man, that's horrible. I hate it when it sticks to you. This is a horrible problem with glue gun glue, guys. But at the same time, at the end of the day, if you stick with it, you can pretty much produce what you want. Now, let's talk about where to get them. Now, you see these little edges? There's all kinds of these little edges, and they make great VGs. So we're actually going to make one right now for the front of that wing by snipping that out and then going to the other side and snipping that out. I'll show it to you in profile in a second, and you'll find these on those little food cartons I've been using, because these are all out of the same group. I've used 3 of them now officially. 2 of them that were big ones and a small one to make various bits. Now, when you look at the profile, these are actually rounded. Well, that's good, because now if I were to take that, trim it up so it's just about equal everywhere. Okay. Try to make it as nice as I can. And now I trim the end to make sure that they're both at the same angle and nice and straight, or just shy of straight if that's the case and that's what you want, which in this case it actually is. Like that. And then I'm going to take this and I'm going to lay it across the center of the wing to help lift the body. But I'm not going to do it on this wing. I'm going to do it on the top wing to make sure that the top wing has lift. And because it's not going to be the one that spoils the air over that, I just have to find the center of this. Not quite. All I have to do is try and make sure when I'm placing it that the edges are equal. And that looks pretty good right there, if I were to put it right there, right? So, let's see how close I was, because we're going to measure that, because it's the best way. And we're going to place it according to the measurement. So I'm going to lock this in place, and this is actually how I recommend you do this, guys. So now, I know I want to put this on the leading edge. Just verify with that you have your leading edge, and I'm glad I did, because it was reversed. And we're going to set this up so that I can set it and you guys can see it, okay? So it's 6 inches, and I'm going to be trying to place this exactly equally along that leading edge. So where I see the middle, from 2 inches to 4 inches, that would be the middle, okay? So I'm going to put a bead of glue right where I want this, from 2 inches to 4 inches. And that should be okay. And then I'm going to stick my VG down right in that zone. and try and make it equal. All the way along. And let's see how I did. You guys will be witnesses if I got it buggered wrong. But it doesn't so much matter if it's a little bit off. I started at 2, but it didn't get all the way there because I didn't measure this first. I just used a scrap piece. So it's a little short, but it needs to be centered. So I could try and move it over, or I could just add a tiny piece that extends it that little bit. It just so happens that I have said tiny little piece sitting right here. I wonder why. And I can just place that, and we'll see. It's not quite 4 inches. It'd actually be a little too big. So we're going to snip it, and then we're going to place it, and we're going to check it. And that looks just about to be 4 inches. It's dang close. And since I started pretty much exactly at 2 inches, if I go just shy of 4 inches, that should be perfect, right? So I'm going to take this. I'm going to put the dot of glue here. Instead of messing around with it in my hand and trying to hold it, I'm just going to take whatever piece I want to have as my VG, and I'm going to place it right there. And then check it. Now, you might think, that's kind of messy. I tend to agree, but at least it makes it so that it's easy. And if I remove as much of the glue as possible, believe it or not, that's not going to be a big deal. That little tiny bit of weight isn't really going to be a problem. Especially because it's on the top wing. No, it's actually going to make a big difference because it's on the top wing. And because of that, I wouldn't necessarily have recommended it, except I kind of want it to be equal in terms of its lift across. This will make a tiny difference of weight, but it also will rough the air more, making a tiny bit more lift in this location, which means when you fly it, you probably won't notice this, believe it or not. And I do want to show that you can fly these with a bit of mistake, and it's okay. And in this case, I could have measured it first, and I didn't, and this is why I tell you to measure. I could also have replaced it with one of these guys. But because I am not done yet, I'm also going to take this one, which has a lot of lift, but I wanted something for the middle, and I'm just going to put this one on, so I'm going to trim it. Then we're going to measure it, and instead of starting from one place like I did before, like a lot of people are tempted to do when they measure something and place it, I'm actually going to do the same thing, bring this close enough that it just kind of sits there to give me my guide, and now I want this right on the leading edge. And so once again, I'm looking at the total length of the wing, and it's just under 6 inches, which means I want to put my marks here as the middle. Okay? And then at the edges, I want to put it right in between these two ideally, but we'll just set it down so that it's right around, its middle is right in that middle. And that'll be good enough, believe it or not. As long as the distance between these two is pretty close, you'll be all right. So let's really look at that. How many millimeters? 1, 2, 3, 4. We got about 10, 20. Ooh, look at that. And on the other side, we're looking at just about the same. Not quite, but it's pretty much there. We're pretty close. This is okay. We got decent. That's not bad. That, believe it or not, that's close enough where you probably won't notice any real difference in the way that it flies, except this wing will have a lot more lift, guys. So now we're going to take nothing and do nothing, because this is basically the end of this little guy, except I kind of wanted it also to have some little VGs out by the tips. So we're going to make these, and then I'm going to just put them on. Only you got to cut them, man. You got to measure them. You got to check things. Because look at that. Would you really want that? No. And I'm also careful about the size. I actually want them. So trim those until you're happy, and then glue. And in the meantime, you can wipe off. That was actually still hot. I could have just used it. And now make my VG. Only this one is kind of a cool type of VG because it has an open back flap. See that? where it's not so tight. Got a bunch of hair in there. I am a long hair, unfortunately. So I'm going to make it right out at the tip, and then I'm going to make another one on the other side that's right out at the tip, and we'll do a good job of corrupting and slowing down the air over that leading edge on the top of the leading edge, right at the tip. Now I noticed on the other one, I actually pushed it out just a touch beyond it. So in this one, I'm actually trying to do the exact same thing. It's okay to have that mistake. And look at that. Unfortunately, I got it perfect. That figures. But now you can just trim this one that tiny bit. And it probably wasn't quite straight there anyway. Hint, hint, wink, wink. And it's okay. Now, I noticed right away I have made a mistake here. You see this one is right at the leading edge. And this one is not. Eh? And that's not so good. But that's one of the things I wanted to show you with this. It's actually not hard to remove the glue gun glue even without wrecking the foam. But you do have to be careful because, as you can see, it'll wrinkle it. And if you're wrinkling it, you are wrecking it. In this case, it's not that big a deal. I'm just going to go here and put my glue where it ought to be, apparently. And then put this right in the spot at the exact edge of it. No farther over than that. And there you go. And now smooth the glue down at the front of that edge as much as you can so that you get a nice even airflow, but evenly corrupted. Haha. So that's pretty close. Now, it's not perfect. It's really not. I mean, look, it's still offset. So that is actually not a good thing. And believe it or not, having it exactly at the edge there isn't a good thing. And I will show you why. What you really want for maximum of, see that? The glue just peeled right off, no damage. And that's awesome. I love this stuff. So I've got my incident moment like this. And this wing is pretty much going to sit like that guy. So what I need to do is have this just about like this, where you actually want it a little bit back, a little bit right at the top of the arc, like this. So put it sideways. This is actually what I recommend. And then look carefully. And then bring it alongside. Put it right to your edge. Push it towards a little bit. And then push it down. And that way, you can just go back up against it with your finger and make sure it's level. Push off this way. Don't just pull straight off with your finger, or you'll tend to pull up across, and you'll smooth the glue as you do, and it'll be just fine. And now I have them a lot closer, and that is tolerable. I can see this one is a little too far ahead, and this one is perfect, but that's fine. These will be fine. This one too could be a little farther back, but in the case of this, I actually don't want that. I want two here out at the tips, and those ones a little farther back than this one. Okay, that's actually a good thing. This will give this really nice lift across the body. The whole thing is going to be a little stiffer too for the glue. Same goes with this one. It's going to have a whole bunch of lift. And this one is going to be the